cases.
I've been pretty good about adjusting the schedules to help you guys, so
I got one little window if you forget to unmute.
help both sides.
I don't want my camera on at all, right?
Correct.
So I'll just leave that closed so there's no slip-ups. And I'm talking into this here, right?
Yes.
All right.
Or here.
Either one of those are on? Very good.
And this is what they're saying on the other end.
All right, and can I use this and he'll see it, or just if I use this, only they will see it?
If you use this, it'll show up like that, but it won't necessarily be seen at the other end.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I need it,
Here,
Okay.
Yeah.
that's what the sheriff.
He'll see it in here.
You'll see it in this.
Friday through.
This is the screen you're seeing up there.
The problem is the latest lights out on Thursday. At like 6 o'clock.
That way, because I have to do this thing where it's like,
So if you were to share your screen on your laptop, you
I don't
would see
see a
it.
particular problem with it. They all want to give me, we need a half an hour of their lunch instead of an hour and a half. Make it an hour, and that'll get them out the door. Okay? I can't give them a cruiser though.
Yeah, okay. So just, can I put those dates on your calendar now for the
Yeah.
end of the
Huh? No, I'm good.
Morning, doctor.
Can you hear us, doctor?
Good morning. Yes, I can.
Okay. You want to test anything, David?
Yes. You guys good? So, Judge, I was told that I'm going to see if this works instead of trying to pull things off my computer. If I turn this on, I'm going to show what's been marked as State's Exhibit 20E. And this should, I don't know why this isn't on. I don't know why
I
it's
hit
not.
presentation.
There we go. Now, Dr. Swanner, can you see this on your end? Does this show up?
No,
I'm not seeing anything right now.
All right, yeah, Paul, I thought Paul said that this would be what would show up as their view.
yeah, but you still have to share it. You took off the total line of the cart because you were hooked into the cart. Would you go get Paul? Sam?
Oh, sure, sorry.
Well, the backup plan is I've shown this all to the defense, and they agree that these are fair and accurate.
Okay. We want to show a document on the screen.
I thought you said if I showed it here, that's what would show up on their courtroom view.
You would have to switch to the card. Document camera.
On, the machine on?
Yeah, this is on.
Here.
Here, okay. You sent it to all.
I sent it to all, but this is the problem. You almost have to do it over here with her station because this thing up here, whenever I hit the all, doesn't do anything.
You mute it first real quick. On the program? No, not you. What we're doing. You are talking.
Okay, so we don't have a solution then?
I'm going to work on a solution here, Judge. I'm just going to try to put them on my desktop.
David, put the doc up now.
Hey, David, can you put the document up there?
Showing you what I've marked for identification purposes, the state's Exhibit 20E. Do you recognize 20E?
Well, we lost the president.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't work. Did you see that?
Did you see the doc?
I did see that document when you had it up. It's not there now.
You did see it, so we can do it without sharing it first with the jury. So that is one way to do that.
The other difference is you lose his response, his immediate response.
Did you send him all the docs?
David, I just sent the email to
Is there a cure for this, or we just stuck?
Judge, I'm going to try to do something here and just put these on my desktop real quick. And then I think, but the thing is still, we just have to do a document share, and I will make sure the defense is okay with that. So, Corinne, could you come here and help me with this real quick? So if I do
Just
this,
do like click on
came up
save as to your
finally.
desktop if you want.
yeah, you do that real quick for me, and if you could rename them. I was going to do a copy paste.
So this is, do you want this labeled as something in particular?
This is notice of summary suspension.
It worked the other day, Paul. I know it's no help.
The only thing I could do is put it in my heart son is recruiting again, start from scratch.
Yeah, but that's not going to necessarily help us, is it?
I can't guarantee it's not. This wasn't put together to do things and data contract at the same time.
So how long are we going to have this albatross here?
Doing to be the one-off.
The emails are the important ones. I just need to be able to click them up and pull them up to show the jury.
Okay.
I think we're just going to not
So we're
use the
stuck
dog
with this
scanner
in this
because
court
that's
forever?
too disruptive.
At least till the next budget.
Necessarily forever.
At least till the next budget cycle.
At least until you're done with your trial. Then you have the option of having jails come back and interview correctly as well.
This is Exhibit 20E.
Well, can't they come in Friday and do it?
I don't know if they could just accomplish all that. Things that happen in one day.
Okay.
So the key is to have everything just on your desktop scanned, and then
It's easier just to pull up. I mean, that's where I put it just because I know it's easier for me, but it's already pulled up and open here in your Adobe, but I can close it if you don't want them up.
now leave these up, because that's the only thing I don't otherwise, because I'm on another camera, right? This is just to share documents. So this is up. What do I have to do to share my screen with
You'll need-
with the world?
You'll need to go to the actual Zoom itself,
Okay, so do
and
that.
then there's an option to share your screen right here.
Let's do that for me. Let's share screen.
And then you can choose what you want to show. So then you can pull,
So these are will all
This.
right there for me. Can I just leave this like this, or will that show up, all those documents? Okay.
that'll show up like that if you share
What
that.
happened to the top?
Okay.
He's in a little corner, he muted.
And then to stop sharing, you just hit
Okay.
stop share.
Okay, very good. Where's stop share?
Perfect.
When you share, yeah, let's just do this
All
again.
right, so which one is
Were you
are
able to
those
see
both
that
emails?
document, Doc?
So right here where it says stop share.
Can you see that?
Is that on your screen, Doctor?
Yes,
Okay.
yes, it is.
That's how we're going to do it, sir.
Perfect.
And then it says stop share, hit stop share. If you want to
And
stop share.
that should stop share, and now go away, and he'll come back.
Yep.
All right, very good. I believe we're ready, sir.
Okay, well, I need a court reporter and a bailiff, so.
I need to double check. I was missing one, but I can go out.
We're all good? Okay, let me bring up the record. David's got to go. Heaven forbid. Oh, we need David back in here. Okay, just periodically stop by and make sure we're okay. Okay. Well, as soon as you leave the room, it'll fall apart, so you know how it is. Okay, we're on the record. All counsel and the defendant are present. Jury is currently out of the room. Mr. Zion, anything for the record?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Who's up? Mr. Baez, anything for the record?
No, sir.
Okay. Let's bring him. We're missing one? We're still one short.
I'm sorry. It's just timeline stuff. We hired him, we'll go through that. We're going to talk about the wood stuff, the anesthesiology stuff, when I got the waiver, and then just the investigation and nothing like that. So, I mean, I'm not getting any patients other than what's referred, not the medical records, just what he did. So. Well, you guys, I assume, are going to be a long time. We've been gunning for them this whole time, making sure we're not going to.
There's water
sure we're
up
not
here.
gonna, put them in Bermuda for you or something.
Sam?
No, he's
There's water up here if you need it.
He's down the street. He's and remember, Judge, remember, Dr. Swanner has some medical issues that may require, if we go longer than an hour, him to take like a 15, 20-minute break to lay down. You guys saw my text about Dillinger. He's back home for Friday.
Yeah.
Or Thursday. I think Friday.
One thing we probably should discuss, one of the jurors, one thing we probably should discuss outside the presence of the juror, one of the jurors has been awarded a fellowship at Harvard. and would like to leave, their flight's going out on Thursdays. It's not this week, but I think it's the next 2 weeks thereafter. It's like 6 o'clock, and would like us to end at 4:30 so they can get to the airport and out. I didn't think you all would have a problem with that, especially who's awarded a fellowship, so.
No, not at all.
Okay, we'll make it work.
Your Honor, is that a regular or an alternate?
I have no idea. I always treat them all the same.
I understand, just curious.
Well, I figured we can rob a half an hour at lunch instead of an hour and a half ago, an hour at lunch, and pick it up where I can.
Does this start tomorrow, Your Honor, or next week?
I think it's like mid-March, like 2 weeks in a row. I want to say the 24th is one of them. I don't have a calendar in front of me. I think it's the 17th and the 24th. I didn't inquire from Ms. Schaefer which juror it was or anything. It was just a general request made to me.
That's exciting.
Yeah.
Good for them.
Here's some activity. Okay. Okay, we'll talk about it later. seated. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. For the record, go ahead and call your witness, and then I'll give a brief explanation.
Thank you, Your Honor. The state of Ohio calls Dr. Larry Swanner.
Okay. Dr. Swanner is, by Zoom, as you can see, he also has a personal ailment, I think involving his back. So we may go an hour, and then he may need to take a break. So we'll be taking a lot, like sessions like that today. Okay? You're not to give any inference one way or the other about it. Doctor, raise your right hand. You solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God.
Yes, I do.
Okay, for the record, I need you to raise your lower. I need you to state your name and then spell it for my court reporter.
My name is Larry, L-A-R-R-Y, Swanner, S-W-A-N-N-E-R.
Mr. Zion.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen.
Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Swanner.
Good morning.
I'd like to start your testimony today with you explaining to the jury a little bit about your background and then go into what you did at Mount Carmel during the years you were employed there. So let's begin with where did you go to college and what did you study in college?
I went to undergraduate college in 1974, graduating in 1979 from the St. Louis College of Pharmacy with a Bachelor's of Science degree in pharmacy.
What, if anything, did you do with that Bachelor of Pharmacy degree in pharmacy?
I worked for 1 year as a pharmacist after graduating and then used the degree, hopefully very effectively, in my study of medicine.
Sorry.
Okay, you bled out on us. Repeat your answer, please.
I worked for 1 year as a pharmacist after graduating from pharmacy school, and then used the degree as a background and an aid in medical school.
What kind of pharmacy did you practice? Were you in a hospital or were you retail?
That's both. I worked in a rural setting for a gentleman that owned several local pharmacies and also contracted with a local hospital to supply pharmacy services. So I worked full-time, but I worked in all of these environments basically on other people's day off. So I worked both in the retail stores and I spent time working in the hospital pharmacy, furnishing pharmacy supplies and pharmacy care in that hospital.
And that would have been in the late 70s and early 80s or early 80s for 1 year you did that?
Yes, that would have been 1979 to 1980.
And then you said you used that background as a basis or as a foundation to go to medical school?
That's correct.
Where did you go to medical school?
I attended Southern Illinois University School of Medicine beginning in 1980, and I graduated in 1983 with my doctorate of medicine degree.
Did you have any area of specialty or board certification?
After graduating from medical school, I attended a family practice residency in Davenport, Iowa that was affiliated with the University of Iowa and completed that residency in 1986 and shortly thereafter became board certified in family medicine.
What did you do thereafter?
Initially, I worked in a small family practice group in Illinois for approximately 2 years. At that point, I was recruited to Columbus, Ohio by Mount Carmel and moved here to work as an independent contractor initially for Mount Carmel in a family practice that they owned. Over the course of time, the arrangements changed, but I worked in that medical practice until the late around 2010, 2011, at which point I changed practice sites, though I was still working for Mount Carmel. In 2004, I was elected as medical staff president by the medical staff at Mount Carmel and served that term until 2006 when it expired. And at that point was hired by Mount Carmel as a vice president of medical affairs at Mount Carmel West Hospital. I worked both seeing patients and in the administrative role for several years. And in 2014, I became a full-time vice president of medical affairs for Mount Carmel West.
All right. So to summarize, you have some experience as a pharmacist, but the bulk of your career is in clinical practice is in family medicine.
That's correct.
And that would involve what people would commonly known as I have to go to a doctor for a checkup or I have an ailment. I would make an appointment with your office if you were my doctor and you would see me in your office.
Yes, I had an office-based practice to see patients for all the reasons that a family physician sees patients. I also saw my own patients in the hospital for quite some time and managed the care in the hospital probably until 2006.
Okay.
Can't remember the date exactly, but for that period of time.
So if one of your patients that you saw in the office on a regular basis ended up in the hospital for something, you would go and see them and check in on them?
Yes, I would see them, manage their care, round on them every day.
Is that still a common practice to your knowledge of family doctors?
No, it's quite rare now. Most primary care physicians keep themselves in the office, and when they have their patients in the hospital, they defer to a hospitalist to manage and coordinate the care in the hospital, and then see them after they're discharged back in the office again.
All right. And what year was it that you began transitioning from your family practice to being an administrator at Mount Carmel?
2006.
Okay. And what happened late? What was the position you eventually ended up in, and what year was that?
I was hired as a vice president of medical affairs in 2006, and that's the position I held until I left.
Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what a vice president of medical affairs does on a day-to-day basis? What were your responsibilities? What was your typical day like?
There really was no such thing as a typical day. My job entailed many aspects of hospital administration and physician work. I was a liaison to the medical staff, and by that I mean I would explain to administration around policies, around regulations, around programming, how that would impact the medical staff. And I would also meet with medical staff members to try and explain that, so I would coordinate new policies, new regulations, new areas of care that the hospital might be implementing with the medical staff so they would understand there would be a seamless transition and they could provide the care that was necessary for those. I also was responsible for contracting physicians. I was responsible for making sure that there was call coverage through the emergency room of all the specialties who we provided care for at Mount Carmel, make sure there was 24/7 coverage for that, so call schedules. I was responsible for overseeing some of the quality and patient safety initiatives, and then other duties assigned, and there were lots of those.
You mentioned one of your responsibilities was to implement new policies and make sure those specialties were covered. In the year 2013, was there a trend in ICU care regarding having doctors there 24 hours?
Yes, there was.
Can you explain that trend to the folks here and explain what, if anything, you and your organization and you and Mount Carmel did?
Sure. Up until that time, it was accepted practice and the standard of care in many hospitals, I would say most hospitals, to have the ICU run like almost any other unit in the hospital. Patients were seen by their physician, but there wasn't necessarily a physician present in the ICU all the time. At Mount Carmel West, because we had a graduate medical program, we had internal medicine residents present even at nighttime, but we didn't necessarily have an attending physician on site. That began in the early 2010s to change, so the standard of care became to have a physician in attendance on site, or either on site or monitoring a computer that monitored these patients 24/7. We recognized that we needed to improve our coverage and stay current with the standards of care, so we entered into a program, or entered into an effort to devise a program where we could have ICU physician coverage 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The way we ended up implementing that program was to have our regular physicians that were critical care physicians already seeing the patients during the day to commit to being on site for 12 hours a day. And then we employed and hired critical care physicians to see patients at the nighttime, 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. or thereabouts. So they would be on site, although patients were not necessarily admitted to their service. They were responsible for being there and taking care of the patients, admitting new patients, addressing situations that would arise during those off hours, whether that be developing instabilities or new problems or other problems that might need to be addressed. They were there to do that, and we implemented that program in 2013.
How many doctors did you hire in 2013 to cover the nighttime ICU in accordance with this emerging standard of care?
2 physicians.
What was the name of the first doctor you hired in 2013?
I don't remember the order of hire for the physicians, but we hired Dr. Hagris and Dr. Husel.
Do you recall if Dr. Hagris had any prior experience as a physician in a hospital when you hired him?
I believe he did, but I'm not sure what that experience was.
Do you recall if Dr. Husel had any prior experience working as a doctor in a hospital prior to hiring him in 2013?
As I recall, his experience had been in association with his training, and this was his first job after training, was what we hired him for.
And do you recall where he received his training at as part of your hiring process?
The Cleveland Clinic.
And doctor, you've been in this field for your career. Can you tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury whether or not the Cleveland Clinic is an accredited, well-known, and or respected organization or a training facility?
Cleveland Clinic is highly respected, has a great reputation for the care that they deliver, and our training programs are likewise held in high esteem.
And were these positions specifically for the night shift?
Yes.
Talking specifically about hiring Dr. Husel, does your hospital require board certification before hiring a physician for a particular area?
It requires that physicians either be board certified or on the track to get board certified.
Can you explain to the folks what that means? What does board certified mean?
There are boards of all the different specialties, whether it be internal medicine, emergency medicine, family medicine, critical care, pulmonology, cardiology. All the specialties have their own boards, which is an organization comprised of those specialists that determine what the minimum standards should be in terms of training and qualifications for a physician to be certified as acceptable and able to practice medicine in that field.
And do you recall what was Dr. Husel's field of specialty?
Dr. Husel was initially trained as an anesthesiologist and then did a fellowship, I believe, in critical care medicine.
And critical care medicine is what they do in the ICU, right?
That's correct.
And doctors that are critical care specialists also have these separate certifications, like you said, internal medicine, in Dr. Husel's case, anesthesiology, etc.
That's correct.
And do you recall whether or not, when you hired Dr. Husel for his first job as a doctor in a hospital outside of training, whether or not he was in fact board certified in the area of anesthesiology?
I don't believe he was.
All right. And would this be normal for a brand new doctor not to be board certified at that point?
Depending upon the specialty, yes.
And do some specialties require experience working before you can even take that test to be board certified?
Yes, some specialties require private, not necessarily private, but independent practice after finishing training, and some also require there to be submission of patient charts for patients that you've seen after you've completed your training before you can qualify to take the examination to be board certified.
So is he hired under what's called a waiver exception to board certification?
Not initially. The requirements for the medical staff, the bylaws, require that a physician, as I said earlier, be board certified or on track and get board certified within 5 years after joining the medical staff.
And was Dr.
So
Husel...
there's no waiver required.
I'm sorry. What was the last part of your answer?
My court reporter asked what was the last part of your answer because two were talking at the same time.
Sure. There was no requirement for a waiver at that time because he still had a period of time after joining the medical staff to become board certified according to the bylaws and the rules and regulations. So it didn't require a waiver.
So he was one of those guys on track to get that, so he's okay.
That's correct.
As far as that requirement goes. All right. So did you meet personally with Dr. Husel during the hiring process in 2013?
Yes, I did.
And can you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury the meeting you would have, without saying what people said, but generally what type of information would have been relayed to Dr. Husel regarding hospital policies, protocols, etc.? What, in your mind's eye, look back and you're meeting with Dr. Husel, what are you telling him regarding expectations, etc.?
Let me ask a question to just clarify what you're wanting. I met with him before he was employed just as an introductory meeting, but then I also would meet with all physicians as they are joining the medical staff. So at the point that he was appointed to the medical staff, I would also meet with physicians as part of their onboarding and orientation process. Which one of those meetings are you referring to?
The onboarding and orientation process?
Okay. I would meet with, I don't remember the specific meeting with Dr. Husel, but I can tell you what my typical habits were regarding these physicians. I would meet with them, welcome them to the medical staff, explain to them that there are lots of policies, procedures, and regulations, along with medical staff bylaws and regulations as well. All of those are available online. We don't print huge binders and give to physicians. We make them available online. Recommend that all physicians become familiar with them, especially the ones that are appropriate to their particular field of practice. Other people would also be involved with the orientation, but I would want to make sure that physicians know who I am, where I am, and make myself available. If there are any problems, questions, or issues that come up, I'm always available. Please let me know how I can help. That would be the essence of the meeting.
And that would be in line with your role as a liaison between people like Dr. Husel and the hospital administration.
That's correct.
All right. Thereafter, would you ever have meetings with Dr. Husel or Dr. Hagris as part of your duties as the Vice President of Medical Affairs?
Yes, I would meet with those physicians 2 or 3 times a year usually. Those are meetings to primarily touch base, check in for both of us, make sure if there were any issues that we would all have an opportunity to express those and get them resolved and addressed in a proper fashion. I wanted to make sure that they were aware that I hadn't forgotten about them because they only worked nighttime. I very seldom would see them in the normal course of working, but I wanted to make sure they were still engaged with the hospital and the medical staff, and so I would ask to meet with them, as I said, a couple of times a year to see how things were going, see if they had any questions or issues I could address.
All right. Looking back on the year 2014, were there any issues that either Dr. Husel or anybody brought to you regarding Dr. Husel?
No.
2015, any issues regarding Dr. Husel or that Dr. Husel brought to you, or issues that were brought to your attention regarding Dr. Husel?
No.
2016, same question.
No.
2017.
No.
2018. Were there any issues brought to your attention regarding Dr. Husel?
Not that I recall.
In October of 2018, did you have a conversation with Katie Barja?
Yes, I did, and I must correct my last statement. I got a little confused with years. In 2018, yes, I did hear of concerns.
Directing your attention to that concern. When is the first time, looking back in your mind's eye, you remember hearing anything about Dr. Husel regarding what we're here for today?
October 25th.
October 25th. Describe what you're doing. Describe the scene to the jury.
Well, there was a daily meeting of leaders in all the different areas at Mount Carmel West that occurred every morning, Monday through Friday at Mount Carmel West, and Katie Barja attended those meetings. After the meeting on October 25th, she approached me with a concern about Dr. Husel's practice.
All right. And for purposes of what you did next, what was that concern that Katie Barja approached you with?
There was a concern about the care of a patient the previous evening who was terminal and was being palliatively extubated, and high doses of a medication, higher doses than the pharmacy was used to seeing, were used on this patient, and they were concerned about that.
All right. I'm going to ask you some questions about your knowledge as a family physician and a family physician that followed his patients in the hospital. Were you familiar, based on your own experience, with what a palliative extubation was?
Yes.
All right. Did you ever yourself perform palliative extubations, the physical act of removing the endotracheal tube and turning off the ventilator?
Yes, I have, many years ago.
All right. So you're familiar when Katie Barja says a terminal patient and a palliative extubation. You know what she's talking about.
Yes.
All right. Did she describe to you the particulars of the dosing concern? The amount of the dose and the drugs involved?
Not that I recall.
Okay. What happened next in this conversation with Katie Barja?
We talked about referring this to peer review for review and investigation, and I agreed that that should occur, and she told me she had already referred that.
Okay. So is this an exchange of emails, text messages, a phone call, or are you face-to-face with Katie Barja at this point?
It's a face-to-face conversation.
All right. Tell the ladies and gentlemen of the jury what peer review is in general, how it works, when it meets, what's the purpose, etc.
Peer review is a quality, is an organization that is tasked with looking at the quality of care that's provided by a peer. So in this instance, this would be a group of physicians that are in same or similar specialties or have access to physicians that are in same or similar specialties that can look at the care of a physician, especially if there are questions raised about the care of a physician, to investigate whether it was appropriate, and if it was not appropriate, why that was, and how it should be remedied. It is a highly, what do I want to say, a confidential process. Its actions and results are not shared beyond the committee and those people who have access to confidential matters related to peer review.
All right. And when, if you know, does peer review, is it fair to call it a committee? Peer review committee? When does this peer review committee generally meet, and how often?
Usually meets monthly.
All right. And to your knowledge, in October of 2018, October 25th, when you said this conversation is taking place, to your knowledge, had peer review for the October month, had they met yet?
I believe they had.
All right. So if it's going to be peer reviewed, it's going to be in the November peer review?
I assumed that, yes.
All right. What's the next thing you remember regarding something about Dr. Husel? What's October 25th, you have this conversation. Do you follow up? Do you start calling people? Do you talk to Dr. Husel? Do you do any of that after that meeting with Katie Barja?
No, that was typically the responsibility of the peer review committee.
Okay. What's the next thing that happens?
The next thing that I recall occurred on November 20th.
All right. So now we're not quite a month, but almost a month later. Right?
Yes. Yes.
And between October 25th and November 20th of 2018, had you done any follow-up? Had you heard from peer review? Had this been brought up in any fashion to you until November 20th?
No, it had not.
All right. We've heard from several witnesses. This is around Thanksgiving of that year, the week of Thanksgiving?
That is correct. This was the Tuesday prior to Thanksgiving.
What, if anything, did you hear next about Dr. Husel?
It was a similar situation after that same meeting. Katie Barja approached me again and told me there was another concern. It was a very similar situation of a terminal patient undergoing a palliative extubation, and pharmacy had again raised concerns about a high dose of medication that was given much higher than they were used to seeing at that time.
Was this a face-to-face conversation, or was this through an email?
This was face-to-face.
All right. I'm going to try to show you what I've marked as States Exhibit 20F. And it's okay to publish to share this. This is not it. This is the Zoom invite. This is not it. I need this one, November 19th. Okay, it should be right here, right? Nope, not there.
No, you need, did you get it? All right, so where is the document?
It should be on my desktop.
Where at?
Is it still open in the?
She had them open for me.
Yeah.
Okay, so lower that one. All right, so let's do this.
Go back there.
Where's your?
I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. Let's see. Where's your? I need to enlarge this. Hang on.
Okay.
Show small. I don't know what you did, David.
I don't know what it is.
Okay.
I had share screen, I just
Yeah,
picked the
if you
wrong
go
one.
back up here and stop share screen.
Stop share screen.
Now go
Okay.
to share screen again.
Share screen
And
is
then
right here.
find the option with the PDF there.
Is that, but that's, I need 20
need
apps.
20
Still,
Still
you
part
can
of
open
it?
it, but it'll be a different tab up at the top.
We're going to figure it out.
Is this one?
No, it's this one here.
What's this?
It's November 19th, that's the second one.
And I don't know if I got that one from you or if it didn't. Couldn't pull it up here.
Oh, that's why we can't do it.
Unless this is,
Try it.
This one? No.
I don't
No?
have that one.
You didn't get this one
I
on?
don't think I did.
Okay.
Do you know where it's at?
I'm going to just ask them. Okay. Let's go to stop share. Yep, if it wasn't scanned, it wasn't scanned. All right. So we're going to try this a different way, Dr. Swanner. My apologies. This is a new process for me. Did your attorney receive an email from Katie, a copy of an email from Katie Barja sent on Monday, November 19th to you, sensitivity confidential? Do you have something like that in front of you or available to you? Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I don't have it in front of me yet. I think I do see something now.
All right. Is that
This is
dated?
what I have. I have an email dated 11/19, but it is not to me. Oh, here we go. Well, that's the 21st. Bear with me, we're searching for the document.
I can put it on the overhead and just cut him out, though. Isn't that what it does?
No, let's try it. See, take our chances.
Okay, I'm up.
Excuse me, can you describe the document more fully so we can look for it specifically?
Hold on for a second. Can you hit send off? He's in a conference in one of the other courtrooms right now. Okay, message him.
David, we can email a copy to
David, the exhibit number you're working.
What's that?
What's the exhibit number you're working?
20F.
20F. Do you have a document that's labeled 20F there, doctor?
I don't think we do.
All right. We did not scan this one. My apologies.
Well, can we come back to this document?
We can come back to that. I think we can just, I think everyone agrees this is fair and accurate, and I can just talk about it. We can just get through it that way.
Any objection?
I agree that it's part of the rules of evidence as to accuracy. I think that's what the trick is.
Well, I mean, otherwise, I mean, if you don't want me, I don't have to go through this process.
Okay, I'll give a brief explanation here. What we're talking about is a concept called foundation. Okay, there's certain questions that have to be asked. Okay, we're not judging the evidence itself. We're judging whether that's a reliable copy of a document. Okay, we're not invading your space. Okay, we're just going through the formality of formation.
Thank you.
Our foundation.
Did you want Paul?
Well, Paul, we couldn't get a document up. We're going to work with it right now.
All right. Well, can we just switch over here so the jury can see then State's Exhibit 20F?
Get it to work there, Paul?
I think, no, I can't.
There we go. Doctor, can you see that? Can you hear me?
He can't hear, well, he can probably hear you, but you can't hear him at the moment.
All right. For the record, publishing what I've marked as State's Exhibit 20F. a document that starts with Katie Barja at the top, from Katie Barja, sent Monday, November 19, 2018, to Larry Swanner.
Okay, hold on. Doctor, can you see the document? I know you can't hear me. Review the doc, I mean, we can't hear you. Review the document real quickly for us, and then we're going to take it off the screen and then talk to you. We'll give them enough time. I'm going to take a chance here. Okay,
All right.
let's take it down. Were you able to see that document, Doctor?
I was, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you all. All right. That says Katie Barja sent you an email on November 19th.
Yes, I saw it.
So you said the next thing you remember was November 20th? Could it have been November 19th that you were actually informed of the next incident?
Yes, it very well could have been. I apologize. I thought it was the 20th, but it obviously was the 19th.
All right. And once again, now, so this was not a face-to-face conversation, at least this document. Did you also have a face-to-face conversation with Ms. Barja on the 19th or the 20th regarding the second incident?
I was informed on the 19th face-to-face. I talked to her before I could see this email.
Okay. Is that email fair and accurate regarding what she told you about the concerns?
Yes.
All right. What, if anything, did you do then on the 19th after being told of the second incident regarding concerns of Dr. Husel in the ICU at night?
Objection. Leading.
Well, it's transitional. Let him have it. Do you understand the question, Doctor?
Yes and no. I need to clarify what's...
Stop. Let's have him rephrase the question for you. Okay?
What, if anything, did you do next?
Well, as I learned, as the email showed, that the peer review committee did not meet to look at the first case, and that was one of my first questions, was what's the status of the first case, since we now had two of these in the course of less than a month. And I learned that the peer review committee canceled its meeting and wasn't scheduled to meet until December. At this point, I didn't want to wait until December because we had two of these cases. So I decided to undertake an investigation myself as best I could. So I looked at the voice reports that were available for these two cases and also went into the patient medical record for both of these patients to see what was documented. I learned upon looking at those that we were looking at extraordinarily high doses of fentanyl and Versed that had been administered to these patients, which seemed to be much higher than I had seen before. So at that point, I tried to contact...
Hold on, Doc. We've got a sidebar on this one. Ladies and gentlemen, get to know each other some more. I didn't see any loving going over there between you all. Come on.
What happened last night? Nothing. Did David catch up? No. Oh, you got it. Oh, yes, that's true. I actually YouTube it, brought it up. I'm getting close to like stars.
let's bring back up the question. Go ahead.
Well, my question is after this email, what, if anything, did you do next? And he was describing what he did next and why he did that.
Okay, indulge me a bit, Doc. Would you repeat your answer, please?
Sure. I decided to start an investigation myself into these cases. I looked at the voice complaints regarding them. I also looked into the patient records and discovered high dose of fentanyl and Versed, much higher than I had personally seen used previously. That was
overruled.
Keep going.
That was quite alarming. I'm sorry?
Keep going.
Okay.
You finish your answer?
That was
Responsive, Judge.
I have not. I am continuing to
Finish your
answer.
answer.
I was quite alarmed by that, so I tried to contact.
Overruled.
I'm objecting to the narrative.
I understand what you're objecting to, okay? Overruled. I'll let the man finish his answer. Doc, you were talking about certain things, and then what did you do next?
I tried to contact Dr. David Ralston, who is the medical director of the intensive care unit at Mount Carmel West. I tried calling him several times. I texted him several times, but I couldn't get him on the phone. And so by this time, it was the end of the day, and I decided to continue my investigation around this the next day.
What happened next?
Well, I still couldn't get in touch with Dr. Ralston. He still didn't return my calls and texts. So I decided to contact Dr. Gina Moody. Dr. Moody.
I'm going to stop you there. Why are you trying to get a hold of Dr. Ralston? You described his title. Why was that important to you to get a hold of Dr. Ralston? What is his role at Mount Carmel at this time?
Dr. Ralston was the medical director of the intensive care unit. So he had some oversight responsibilities regarding the care that physicians provide there. I wanted to contact him to ask him if he was aware of these cases in specific, but in general, if he was aware of the utilization of fentanyl and Versed in patients in these situations at these doses. Perhaps there was a new protocol that I was not aware of, or perhaps there was some extenuating circumstances that wasn't evident in the medical record that I could find, and I thought he might have additional knowledge that would help me in my investigation of what was going on with these drugs and these patients.
But you weren't able to get a hold of him, is that right?
That is correct.
So what did you do next?
I contacted Dr. Gina Moody. Dr. Moody is also a critical care physician. At the time, she was the chairman of the Department of Internal Medicine, so she had medical staff leadership responsibilities. But actually, more importantly than that, she was a critical care physician who had seen patients like this, had treated patients like this, and I could ask her similar questions regarding the standard of care from her perspective.
What did you do next?
After talking to Dr. Moody, I tried to do some research online just regarding the dose of fentanyl in these situations to see what I could discover.
What did you do next? Go ahead.
By this time it was the 21st of November, and I was contacted about a third patient at that time.
November 23rd. Okay. I'm going to try this again because I do believe I have this one up. I'm going to show you what I've marked for identification purposes. It's this email. By agreement of the parties, we're going to publish 20E. Share screen. Share screen. It should be right there. Boom. Share. Can you see that, Doctor?
Yes, I can.
All right. And for the record, this is 20. God bless America. Yeah, 20E. All right. And it is, for the record, an email from Katie Barja. What's the date on that, please?
November 21st, 2018.
And that is to you and who else?
Sean McKibben, who is the president of Mount Carmel West Hospital, and Dina Bush, who was the chief nursing officer. with a copy to Randy Miles, who was one of the directors in pharmacy.
All right, and the subject line?
Well, it happened again.
All right. And is this a fair and accurate copy of the email from Katie Barger that you received on Wednesday, November 21st?
Yes, it is.
So are we now on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving of 2018?
That is correct.
Okay. Stop sharing. What did you do next?
Well, I looked at this patient's chart also. I also contacted Dr. Dominic, who is the chairman of the Department of Anesthesiology, to get his input into the utilization of these drugs at these doses.
What happened next?
I had previously let Sean McKibben know that I was investigating 2 cases at that point. So I followed up with him to let him know there was a 3rd case that was very similar, and he asked or he convened a meeting of Mount Carmel West leaders who had input into these areas of care in these situations that same day.
I'm going to stop you there. Do you recall what date this meeting occurred on?
November 21st.
That same day?
Yes.
And Sean McKibben, what's his role in the hospital?
He's the president of the hospital.
And who, if you recall, was convened to be at this meeting?
I was there. Dina Bush, the chief nursing officer, was there. Katie Barger was there. I believe there was a representative from pharmacy, though I can't remember exactly who that was. There was also one of the nurse managers who works in the ICU.
What happened next?
I believe there was a discussion at that meeting, and a decision was made and agreed upon that for the time being until this could be more further investigated and resolved, that Dr. Husel should not be seeing patients anymore, and there was a discussion about how to accomplish that. I made the recommendation at that meeting, and it was agreed upon to take him off of the ICU schedule.
How would this prevent Dr. Husel from seeing patients?
I was aware that Dr. Husel was contracted by a subsidiary of Mount Carmel that employs physicians, the Mount Carmel Medical Group, and his sole contracted work was working in the ICU. So if he was taken off of the schedule, he wouldn't be working seeing patients in the ICU, and that was the only place that he worked within the hospital. So this should adequately prevent him from seeing patients for the time being.
Was your investigation complete, or had definitive conclusions been made at this point?
No. We were still investigating. There were obviously concerns, but no definitive solution, no definitive answer had been determined.
If your investigation had revealed, hypothetically, that what Dr. Husel was doing was appropriate, would having him temporarily removed from his work schedule harm him reputation or career-wise in any way?
Sustained.
No.
No.
I apologize.
Answer.
May I ask the basis?
We had an objection.
Yeah. May I ask the basis?
Our previous discussion. You're soliciting an opinion.
Oh, okay. I'll move on.
Move to strike it.
I already struck it.
My apologies.
What happened next?
I tried to get in touch with Dr. Husel to inform him of this decision and had some difficulty doing so. It took some time to get in touch with him, but eventually I did get in touch with him that same day and informed him that concerns had been raised around the care of 3 of his patients, and this needed to be investigated. So for the time being, he would be taken off of the ICU schedule, and he did not have to report to work. We would let him know as things progressed what the next steps might be.
for full explanation, what difficulty or why did you have difficulty getting hold of Dr. Husel on this is all on the same date, the 21st?
Objection.
Okay,
Yes.
sustained to the format of the question. You're asking him to speculate.
I'm asking why he had difficulty.
Okay, that wasn't what your question was, but
Okay, I'll rephrase then.
rephrase.
Why did you have difficulty getting a hold of Dr. Husel?
Judge, objection.
Well, let him answer that one.
I could not find a contact phone number for him. I asked the ICU if they had any information about that. I looked into his file.
Okay.
And
You've gone a little bit far. Let's next question.
All right. You were eventually able to get a hold of him and inform him that he's off the schedule, just for transition.
Yes.
that is correct.
What happened next?
I contacted Dr. Richard Streck. He was the Chief Clinical Operations Officer for the health system. So I informed him of the situation that we had, what we had found so far, and what actions we had taken.
Okay, so is that a Dr. Streck or who's he?
Yes, he is Dr. Streck, Dr. Richard Streck. He was essentially the Chief Medical Officer for the health system, but his title was Chief Clinical Officer.
What does a Chief Medical Officer do? Can you explain that to the folks?
On a system level, he did much of the things that I did on a hospital level. He oversaw the care. He had a lot of different departments reporting to him. He was involved with strategic development from a physician's aspect, from a clinical aspect. As I said, many clinical operations reported to him, including quality and safety. I believe pharmacy may have reported to him at one point. So he oversaw the clinical operations in the entire health system.
And describe this entire health system. When you're saying the entire health system, you're at Mount Carmel West, a particular hospital, you said.
Right.
What's the
Mount Carmel Health System? That's Mount Carmel Health System entails, at that time, 4 different hospitals: Mount Carmel West, Mount Carmel East, Mount Carmel St. Anne's, and Mount Carmel New Albany Surgical Hospital. It also had its own employment arm that employed physicians. The Mount Carmel Medical Group had its own Medicare Advantage insurance plan, Medigold. Also owned and operated several outpatient practices from primary care to specialty.
Stop.
Yes.
Madam Court Reporter, what did you need?
What was the name of the Medicare plan?
Did you hear
Medicare Advantage. Yes, I did. Medicare Advantage plan called Medigold, Medigold.
Okay, does that work for you, Madam Court Reporter?
Also, can you spell Dr. Streck's last name?
Streck.
Okay, Ms. Stein, why don't you jump in and get us back to where we need to be?
All right, so now you're informing the organization's level of management, right? That's when Dr. Streck's brought in?
That's correct.
What happens next?
I think next is when I spoke to Dr. Husel, I asked him to meet with me personally on Monday, November 26th, and I was going to try and get Dr. Ralston to attend that meeting as well. He agreed to do so. On Sunday, that would be the 25th of November, I believe, Dr. Ralston did return my messages, and I explained to him what was going on, what we had discovered, what we found. Asked him to, if he could join the meeting with Dr. Husel on Monday in my office, and he agreed to do so. So on Monday, Dr. Husel, Dr. Ralston, and I met. I'm sorry?
You both were talking at the same time. Hold on, relax for a second, Doc. You both were talking at the same time. Ask him a new question.
Did this meeting occur on Monday, November 26th?
Yes, it did.
And looking back in your mind's eye, where did this physically take place? What time of day it was? Who was present?
It took place around noon in my office at Mount Carmel West. Dr. Husel, Dr. Ralston, and I were in attendance.
Okay. What, if anything, did you say to Dr. Husel at this meeting?
I explained to him what the concerns were regarding the doses of these medications. I believe I gave him the voice reports so he could see them. I explained to him what the concerns were and asked him about those dosages and what his intent was, why he was using dosages this high.
All right.
I also asked Dr.
Go ahead.
I also asked Dr. Ralston to explain what his usual way of caring for these patients and performing this procedure was on patients like this.
All right, very good. And I don't want, because of hearsay issues, not what Dr. Husel said, but can you describe to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury Dr. Husel's demeanor during this meeting?
He was fairly passive. He did not seem to be upset. He was collegial. He was cooperative at that time, but and answered my questions.
All right, and we're not getting into what he said. All right, so how do you recall this meeting ending? Regarding any conclusions, were there any conclusions? Was there any resolution at the conclusion of this November 26th meeting?
I informed Dr. Husel that we were going to continue leaving him off the schedule for the time being. I thanked him for coming into the meeting. I think I said that I hope this could be resolved quickly, but we would be in touch after we had more information to share with them.
All right. Was Dr. Husel fired at this point?
No.
All right. What's the next thing you recall happening in this instance after the meeting? What happened next chronologically?
Later that same day, I had follow-up with Dr. Streck, and he indicated that he had asked the quality department to do some investigating into potential other cases and to run some reports to investigate further. And they did have a report back in response to his request. At some point that week, I was shown that report.
All right.
I don't know if I can speak to what the report showed, but...
Well, not yet. Let's talk about what this report, how is that being done? And let me be more specific, directing your attention to, gosh, I don't even know what do you know who Leslie Volman is?
Yes, I do.
Who's Leslie Volman and what does she do for the hospital?
She works in the quality and safety department. Can't tell her specific job responsibilities, but I know she did a lot of work with researching data and statistics, and that was done by a computer.
All right. So part of her jobs is to research data using a computer. Is that fair?
That is correct, yes.
Is she the person that is researching data using a computer regarding Dr. Husel?
Yes.
All right.
Hold on, Mr. Zion. Doctor, you've got this glare on your face from the sun coming in. Okay?
Okay.
I was just letting you know if someone could fix that. How are you holding up right now? Are you feeling okay?
Doing okay. I could... What time would your normal break occur, Your Honor?
About 15 minutes from now.
Let's shoot for that.
Okay.
All right.
Excuse me, does it help if I sit back and pull the computer this way? Does that help the glare?
Okay, when you move forward is when the reflection comes off your face. Like you
When I move
bend
forward?
into the computer, like there, it's not bad there.
Yes.
But I think they fixed it, so
Okay.
it was just annoying me. I'm sorry, guys. Okay, continue on.
Were the results of this report shared with you?
Well, first of all, may I indicate what the parameters of the report were?
Please.
So the request and the report looked at the previous 2 years and any patients not in an operating room who were on a ventilator receiving over 500 micrograms of fentanyl during their hospital stay while they were, I believe, while they were in the ICU. The report indicated there were several of these patients, more than the 3 that I had been investigating. All of those patients had those high doses of fentanyl ordered by Dr. Husel throughout the Mount Carmel Health System.
Was one of the parameters of this report specific to Dr. Husel?
No, it looked at all patients, regardless of physician.
How many other physicians, and you said this was the whole hospital system?
Objection, Judge.
Okay, let's rephrase the question.
Was this report run for the whole hospital system?
Yes, it was.
So those 4 hospitals you described?
That is correct.
Outside of the OR, in the ICU, how many doctors in the whole hospital system were ordering 500 micrograms or above of fentanyl?
Objection.
Just one.
Objection.
Stop. I'll permit the question. Go ahead and give the answer.
Judge, he's tested.
Just one.
Okay, let's go sidebar. If we take a break real quick, I give my jury 15 minutes. Will that work for you, Doc?
Yes, it will. Thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, remember the admonition. We're back in 15 minutes, and then we'll deal with this over here. Have a great break. Now we're going to sidebar.
Is this off now? We cool with him?
Yeah, I mean, he can't hear what we're doing right now.
Okay.
He's got his video and off. Let's approach, guys.
It's hard, it's the microphone issues, right? Because he doesn't get the delay and talk like when you start talking.
It's like a 2 seconds or 2 second delay sometimes.
Just enough that was throwing us off on our cadence.
Judge, if I can have just a moment, I think I'm going to withdraw the objection. Withdraw the objection. I'm just discussing it with Ms. Menashe, but I believe that's where I'm being right now.
Do you want a minute to decide?
Yes.
Go ahead.
But I have a question. He said just there's one of them.
Even though it's all over the internet, but also relaxation.
You guys just need to
I'm under a doctor's care.
I know that those trolls out there just get you overdosed.
I was going to try to have this all of that.
We will try and find it.
That was wonderful.
bench chair. Brought this one to him. Because that's one of the original ones that I got when I first came. It's a great chair.
I would say they make special court reporter chairs that have like really nice seats on them and their backs. They're a little spendy, but it's probably worth it with as much as I sit down.
But court reporters complain about other stuff.
Oh, no, I'm not.
I learned a long time ago, chairs instrumental to your success.
It's on the other side of the
You ready, Judge?
Yes.
All right.
I'm sorry, can you approach real quick? The jury, when they're coming in?
Oh, I've already got them coming through the door. We're going to do on the side.
Just decide, I don't think it's going to record, so it's just discussion.
Do we need it on the record?
I don't think so. Mr. Myers?
Y'all can be seated. We just need one more second. Talk amongst each other. Thanks, guys.
Kind of maybe get it settled before you start on the frames.
Doctor, remember you're still under oath.
I'm here.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Continue on.
Judge, for the record, the defense withdraws the objection.
Okay.
So, to get us back to where we were, Leslie Bowman is running reports, right?
Correct.
The parameters 500 or above of fentanyl outside the OR. Do you know if these patients were on ventilators?
I believe they were, yes.
Okay. And how many doctors in the whole system are doing this?
Just one.
And who is that doctor?
Dr. Husel.
All right. What happens next? I think we left off chronologically with the timeline. You on Monday, November 26th, meet with Dr. Husel and Dr. Ralston. What happens next?
I had the conversation with Dr. Strack. Later that week, I also spoke to Dr. Philip Santa Emma, who is the medical director of the palliative care program at Mount Carmel. He is also the past president of the medical staff. I spoke to him about what we had found to get his input into what he thought about these drugs at these dosages. Because he's a palliative care physician, he has lots of experience at palliative extubation, taking care of terminally ill patients. I spoke to him. I spoke to Dr. Dominic again to get more information from him in terms of his opinion.
You mentioned Dr. Dominic. Who is Dr. Dominic, and what does he do at the hospital?
Dr. Dominic is the chairman of the Department of Anesthesiology at the time.
All right. What happens next? So this is that you had 2 conversations with Dr. Dominic, the chair of the anesthesiology. What happens next?
There is also a meeting that occurs during that week with system executives to talk about the situation. That would be the CEO, Ed Lamb, General Counsel for Mount Carmel Health, Dr. Streck. I believe he called in other VPMAs from other hospitals, so they're made aware of the situation. And I frankly can't remember anyone else that was there, although I'm sure there were. So we had conversations about this, about ongoing investigation, informing the parent company Trinity as to what's going on.
I'm going to stop.
Those were the topics. Excuse me?
I'm going to stop you there, Doctor. Yeah, this is the first time you've mentioned the parent company, Trinity. Can you explain to the ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if you can, the structural organization of Mount Carmel as far as whether they are an independent company, what a parent company is, etc.?
Sure. As we discussed previously, Mount Carmel is a health system of its own, but it is also owned and operated by a larger national health system, Trinity Health, which owns, I don't know how many, close to 100 hospitals nationally and some other health systems nationally, but they are the owner and the parent corporation of Mount Carmel Health.
And what date, if you can recall, was, to your knowledge, Trinity informed of Dr. Husel's dosing habits during palliative extubations in the nighttime ICU?
I don't know. The meeting that I attended with Mount Carmel Health executives occurred about the 28th of November, I believe, and it was discussed, but I was not part of actually informing them. So from the point that it was discussed that we need to do that, I believe they were informed after that meeting at some point, but I can't tell you exactly when.
Okay. What happens next in your mind's eye, looking back, big meeting around November 28th, what happens next?
The next thing I recall is the following week, which was December 4th. I was called into an executive meeting with the CEO, as well as the Dr. Streck, the Chief Clinical Officer for the health system. I was informed that an external peer review of some of these cases had been performed, and the review,
Okay.
I won't talk about what I was told about the review.
Doctor, stop.
You said you were informed that an external peer review? Is that the word you used?
Yes.
Tell us what an external peer review is.
That's an evaluation of the care of a patient or patients that is performed by a peer, just like we spoke about peer review earlier. But this time it is a doctor or group of doctors that are not part of the Mount Carmel Health System.
Okay. So that happens. What happens next?
I was given a letter by the CEO to deliver to Dr. Husel that informed him of a summary suspension of his privileges at Mount Carmel Health.
What date, if you recall, did that occur on?
I was given the letter on the 4th of December. Then I delivered it to Dr. Husel on the 5th of December.
And when you say delivered, was this something you mailed, emailed, texted? How did you deliver it to them?
I contacted him and asked him to come to my office, and he came to my office on the 5th of December, and I hand-delivered the letter to him. There were 2 copies of it. He was asked to sign 1 copy and return it to me so I could return it for his file at the system office.
Okay. So is he fired yet?
No, strictly about his privileges to practice at the hospital.
What happens next?
There were also ongoing, there had been several meetings of executives within the hospital. I spoke about the one on the 28th. I also attended other meetings. And there were conversations in those meetings at that point about communication. Who should this be communicated to? How should it be communicated to? And a decision was made to inform law enforcement about this. And I was asked to be a part of that communication to them. And so on the later on December 5th, I, along with Sean McKibben, I believe Hospital General Counsel was there, but I can't say that for sure, met with the county prosecutor and one of his attorneys.
Would that have been Ron O'Brien and Jimmy Lowe, if you recall?
Yes, it would.
All right. What happened next?
After that meeting with them, the 2 days later on the 7th of December, Columbus police detectives came to Mount Carmel. I met with them, and they said they wanted to talk to hospital personnel that were involved with the care of these patients, and they began to do that.
I was going to say, when did they want to talk to them?
As soon as possible. They started, I believe, that day.
Had any of these personnel been talked to about what was going on regarding Dr. Husel and the investigation you and your colleagues were conducting?
I am not sure. I don't have a list of who they spoke to. It occurred on, much of that, the interviewing occurred on the floor next door to my office, so I saw nurses and pharmacists coming and going into that room with the detectives, but they did not give me a list or tell me exactly who they were talking to.
All right. What happened next?
I attended several meetings that occurred on a daily basis that included Mount Carmel Health executives as well as Trinity Health executives, and so there were ongoing conversations about the status of the situation, communication, who should be communicated, what should be communicated, how should that be communicated. So there were several discussions about that. I was not involved in decision making, but was involved in the plan to communicate. It was decided that patients' families should be communicated about what we had discovered and what occurred, and a script was put together, and I was asked to be involved with the communication to patient families along with several other physicians. I believe we began to do that shortly after Christmas in December.
You said a script was put together to talk to family patients, to the patients' families that were affected?
Yes, so that the intent was there be consistent communication so everyone heard the same thing, and it was an intent, I believe, I was told, to...
Okay, sustain. As to the intent issue, go ahead.
All right. Well,
Yes.
I believe you're explaining, I asked why a script was put together. And can you explain why a script was put together?
Objection. He said he did not have any input on the script.
I think he said he did.
I think he did. So, Doctor, can you answer the question?
I can. The intent of the script was to make sure there was...
Hold on.
I'm sorry.
Let me see. You're talking about your understanding of what the intent was?
Yes.
Okay.
Your understanding of the intent was?
That there be consistency in the communication so everyone heard the same thing. And there was also several points that needed to be made, and some aspects that we were instructed not to talk about.
All right. And did you actually yourself participate in any of these phone calls to patient families?
Yes, I did.
All right. Do you recall who else was involved in calling patient families regarding the dosing habits of Dr. Husel in the nighttime ICU during palliative extubations?
The chief nursing officer, Dina Bush, was making some of these phone calls. Dr. Santa Emma, the palliative care medical director, was involved. Dr. Streck made a few calls. I believe Dr. Tom Brady made a few calls. Dr. Brady is a hospitalist and he was president of the medical staff at the time.
All right.
There may have been others, but I don't remember who else may have been making phone calls.
Why, if you know...
Excuse me, I do remember. I believe, I'm sorry, Dr. Ralston made some of these phone calls too. I just remembered.
And Dr. Ralston, you identified as the head of the ICU that you were trying to get a hold of when this first broke?
Yes, he was medical director of the ICU.
All right. And why, if you know, your understanding, why are you contacting these patient families at this time?
Objection.
Hold on.
Okay, I'll permit it. You can answer the question.
There was a consensus that Mount Carmel wanted to be transparent about finding this.
Objection, Judge.
And it was the patient families.
I'm going to stop you there, please. There's an objection.
Denied. Doctor, do you remember where you were at?
Yes. There was a decision that Mount Carmel wanted to be transparent about finding this, and we felt that the patients' families deserved to know when we had discovered areas of concern regarding their loved ones' care, especially with an issue like this, that it was felt may have actually shortened the lives of these patients.
Okay, stop for a second. I'm going to talk to the jury. We're talking about a process of what they're going through, okay? Of why they may do something. That's the purpose for you to consider this. Do you understand that? Okay? Mr. Zion.
What happens next?
These patient phone calls take a long time to conduct. It takes several days trying to find next of kin, trying to contact them. It's not necessarily an easy, straightforward process, but that's accomplished. There is also communication that's put together that around the Mount Carmel colleagues, the employees, as well as to release to the media and go from there to the public.
All right. So I'm going to ask about something a little different now, so I don't forget. We had talked about Dr. Husel's not being board certified, but on track to be board certified when he was hired. Remember that?
Yes. Yes.
And then you testified, all this came to light, and he is suspended when you hand-delivered that letter to him on December 5th of 2018.
Yes.
When he is suspended, had he taken the test to become board certified at this point?
No, he had not.
And he had been at the hospital at this point for 5 years?
That's correct.
All right. So at this point, should he have been board certified in anesthesiology to continue his employment?
Yes.
What, if anything, is being done about his lack of board certification, either prior to or simultaneous with the events of October, November, December of 2018?
Dr. Husel's appointment to the medical staff was set to expire in December of 2018. So a few months earlier, he had filled out an application for reappointment to the medical staff, as is typical for most physicians, if they want to stay on the medical staff. That application is then processed and researched, and it was determined that he had not achieved his board certification at that point. So he was presented to the Credentials Committee, and he was notified that he was now outside the guidelines and the requirements of the medical staff for board certification. He had followed up with a letter requesting a waiver to allow him to take his board certification exam. In that letter, he had indicated that he had already scheduled to take it in May of 2019. So that was looked at his reappointment meeting with the Credentials Committee, and that waiver was approved. It's very typical to approve those waivers, and so that was consistent with how that had been dealt with other medical staff members in the past. So that waiver was approved for 1 year. So he was not required to be board certified, but was allowed to take the board certification exam, and within 1 year that would be looked at again, and he should be board certified by then.
So in fairness to Dr. Husel, that is nothing extraordinary that a new doctor after 5 years would be asking for a waiver for a year just to get the test done.
It's not that common, but it does happen, I would say probably a half dozen times a year.
All right. Now, is that what you do? That tract of recertification and all that jazz, is that what you're doing at the same time you're investigating them, or are those other people doing that?
Well, I do sit on the Credentials Committee. It is the credentialing office that tracks all of that and determines if criteria and requirements have been followed and presents that to the Credentials Committee. I do sit on the Credentials Committee. I did sit on the Credentials Committee at that time. So I was present for that. So I heard all of that presentation.
All right. And after he was suspended on December 5th, was he thereafter re-credentialed to be on the Mount Carmel hospital staff?
No.
What happens next after these phone calls are made to the patients' families that were affected by the dosing habits of Dr. Husel in the nighttime ICU?
We continue to investigate. As I said, other communication plans are put together, continue to meet on a regular basis, and eventually in January, I was put on administrative leave and taken out of the loop, so to speak.
You say communication plans were developed. What is that? Who's doing that?
Well, most of those, just like the script that we talked about earlier, most of those were put together by the communications department. They involved video recordings that would be made, that the plan was to show those to Mount Carmel colleagues, also a video to be made to be released to the media, and then of course with anticipation was the media would show this to the public. There was some education about interacting with the press and the media that was done to those of us that might be involved in that.
All right. And so Mount Carmel has its own department that deals with this?
It does have a communications department, although there was external consultants contracted to deal with this issue. This was above and beyond what the typical experience and requirements were for our communications department.
You said outside, what was the word, outside consultants?
Yes.
So like a public relations firm, is that a way to put it?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Not associated with Mount Carmel?
That's correct.
Okay. Did you speak to any of these public relation firms hired by the hospital to deal with this?
I was involved with them in some of the education programs that were put together and some of the discussions about what needed to be, they asked my opinion about what needed to be communicated to the various constituents at these different communication plans were being designed for. So I interacted with a few of them.
All right. Are you aware of whether or not, besides law enforcement, any other authorities were notified by Mount Carmel or Trinity Health?
Yes, that there's a requirement because of certain certifications, and since we had this, we had to notify CMS,
What's CMS?
which is who Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's the federal government that oversees and administers Medicare. We had to notify them. I believe we also notified the Board of Pharmacy about this. Board of Nursing was notified. Can't remember. We had to notify, I believe, the Board of Medicine, and we had to report to the National Practitioner Data Bank regarding Dr. Husel being suspended from the medical staff.
Right. So it wasn't just the police, it were all these other, in your world, authorities, regulatory bodies?
That's correct.
And when you say we notified, is that you proactively reaching out to them, or are they coming to you and saying, we want to know what's going on?
Mount Carmel took the initiative and notified them themselves. They didn't wait to be contacted.
All right, Doctor, I'm just going to ask you a few more questions here. You got to the point in your memory of the chronology of what happened by saying you're being involved in the communication efforts, etc. And then what happens in January to you, employment-wise?
On January 25th, I was put on administrative leave.
What does that mean?
Well, that means that I'm still employed by the organization, but have no responsibilities, and basically I was told to not come to work anymore until further notice.
All right. How long did that administrative leave last?
Until July 11th.
What, if anything, happened on July, and this is 2019?
That's correct.
What, if anything, happened on July 11th, 2019?
I was called into a meeting with Mount Carmel Health System executives and terminated.
Thank you. I have no further questions at this time, Doctor.
Mr. Baez, you need, what, 10 minutes to get set up?
Yes, please.
We'll take a quick 10-minute break, ladies and gentlemen, and get back to it. Remember the admonition?
All right.
Have a great 10 minutes.
Do you need any of this stuff up here?
Yeah, you can read it all.
Okay.
believe so.
Mr. Zion?
Yeah, Judge, just so long as a proper foundation is laid prior to anything being shown to the jury. That was my only concern with logistics of this. And I've been assured by Mr. Baez that will be, nothing's going to be shown of him saying, I don't know what that is, and then,
And what's this over here on the side?
That's in case I need to write something down, Judge. Rather than switch off to the Elmo, I figure I could write it down just as easily, quicker, kind of flow a little easier. If I need to write something down.
So it's demonstrative in purpose?
Yes, just demonstrative.
Okay, let's see how this works.
All rise.
You may be seated. Doctor, you're still under oath. Mr. Baez, you ready to proceed?
Yes, sir. May I please report?
It may.
Mr. Zion. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning. I hope that's not a precursor to what's about to go. Good morning, Doctor.
Good morning.
Dr. Swanner, you are actually in the Arena District right now, right?
Yes, right now.
Okay, you're in the law firm of Mount Carmel?
I'm in the law firm of Jones Day.
Well, you're the law firm that represents Mount Carmel, correct?
Objection, Your Honor.
I believe they do.
I'm gonna give him a little leeway here, but
Now, I understand your back issues, but there was nothing that precluded you from arriving at your lawyer's office today, was there?
I don't understand the question.
Well, I'll just come right out and ask you. Is the reason you're there on Zoom versus live here in court is because perhaps cross-examination might not go so smoothly?
Objection, Your Honor.
sustained argumentative.
Are you aware of, was the decision made to be present at your lawyer's office a few blocks away as opposed to coming here live in court had anything to do with cross-examination?
No.
Okay. Now, but as so far we're good as far as your back is concerned today, right?
So far, so good.
Okay, if you have any issues, please let me know, and I'm more than happy to pause my examination. Okay?
Thank you.
All right,
Yes.
sir. I'm going to try and go chronologically and see if we can, and I'll try not to bounce around too much. Picking up where Mr. Zion mentioned about Dr. Husel's board certifications, fact of the matter is he actually took the written portion of the board certification, correct?
You mean prior to reappointment?
Correct, yes.
I believe so, yes.
Okay. And in fact, he passed that on the first try, correct?
I don't recall if it was first try or not.
Okay. But you were aware he passed, right?
Yes.
Okay. And that all he had left was the oral portion of that exam, correct?
That's correct.
And kind of hard to study for an oral portion of an exam if you're working full shifts over at the ICU, right?
Objection, Your Honor.
I can't answer. I don't know how what his study habits are, how he felt he needed to prepare for that.
If you don't know, that's okay. That's an acceptable answer, okay? I'm going to ask you several other questions. So, taking some of what was covered in direct examination, you mentioned that none of the nurses had ever in the 5 years employed with Mount Carmel had ever come with any complaints about Dr. Husel, correct?
That's correct.
And no other physicians also ever complained about him.
That's correct.
No other pharmacists ever came to you and said, we got a problem with Dr. Husel.
That's correct.
And that was in 2014, 15, 16, 17, up until the October of 2018, correct?
Yes.
Now, in addition to that, his contract was renewed 2 times while working for Mount Carmel, correct?
I don't know details about his contract.
So you have no idea how many times Mount Carmel renewed his employment contract?
Sustained.
Would that be something that's under your supervision, sir?
No.
Okay. Now, in 2014, he was in fact given an award as Doctor of the Year, correct?
That's correct.
And this was given to him or recommended to be given by other physicians, correct?
I'm not sure exactly how that award was determined.
Okay, so
I thought it was nursing staff, but I don't know.
I'm going to show you what is a Defense Exhibit H1.
Okay.
And if you give us a moment, we're going to bring that up. Do you see that, sir?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and if you could scroll up just a little bit, David. Now, that's your signature on the bottom left-hand corner, correct?
Yes, it is.
So, one could say that as far as Dr. Husel's concerned, you think at this time he's doing a pretty good job?
Yes.
Okay. And you're also aware that in 2018, he was nominated again for this award, wasn't he, sir?
I don't recall that.
And of course, that award was not given to him.
Objection, Your Honor. The answer is I don't know anything about that.
Okay, well, you're testifying, let's...
I'll move on, Judge, it's not important. So, sir, in addition to this, you actually met with Dr. Husel about 2 times a year to go over his care, correct?
It was not a review of his practice. It was more of a checking in, how are things going sort of meeting. So it wasn't really a review or performance evaluation.
And that's, but that's what...
reason why the exhibit's
Okay, we can take that down. But Doctor, that's typical of what you do with all physicians, right?
No, not all physicians.
Well, those in the ICU.
I specifically did that with the nighttime ICU physicians.
Okay. And you also met with Dr. Hagris a couple times a year?
Yes, the same meeting.
As well as other staff members at the ICU?
I don't recall meetings with other staff members necessarily. Dr. Ralston was present at those meetings, and there would be other staff meetings or other staff members at other meetings I would have, but not specifically that I called or that I reached out to. There would be ICU quality meetings that I might attend that other staff members would also be in attendance. There were medical department meetings that physicians would be at that I would also attend. So I would interact with the medical staff.
I'm sorry, doctor. Let's stick to just my question, okay? My question was, you met with other healthcare professionals, and your answer was no?
My answer is...
Or you don't recall?
I wouldn't, well, no, I
Let
wouldn't.
him answer, okay? Go ahead, doctor.
Thank you. I would not schedule specific meetings with all other medical staff meetings the way I scheduled them with Dr. Husel and Dr. Agris. So no, not like that, but yes, in other situations, I would meet with medical staff members.
And the purpose of your meeting with the doctors at ICU was just to check on how things were coming along and to see if there were any issues or any concerns to be discussed, correct?
That's correct.
And as far as you were made aware during these meetings, there was nothing of the kind to discuss.
That's correct.
Okay. And now, as far as your position is concerned, you are the Vice President of Medical Affairs, right?
Was, yes.
Okay, well, at this time, I'm talking about the relevant times.
Yes.
That's pretty high up there in terms of the chain of command at this hospital, is it not?
Yes, I would say one of the top 3 at the hospital administratively.
But as it related to the doctors, nurses, pharmacists, you were the man in charge, right?
Pharmacy and nursing did not report to me, no.
Obviously, you had significant input should an issue arise at the pharmacy, right?
If it impacted the medical care and the medical staff, yes.
Okay, so these were your people, right? The employees, the healthcare providers, the healthcare professionals at Mount Carmel were under your charge, correct, sir?
They did not all report to me. We were colleagues, we interacted, we worked together in a collegial fashion, but they did not report to me.
I'm not asking if they actually directly reported to you. My question, I guess, is you're in charge of them, though, correct? I mean, if something...
Objection, Your Honor.
I'm not even finished with the question.
Okay.
I'm trying to clarify it for the witness.
Ask the question.
Sure.
I'll note the objection for now.
If there's an issue as it relates to the medical care, these are your people, right?
Objection asked and answered.
I'll give it to him. Can you answer it, Doc?
I was available, and the leadership at Mount Carmel West all made ourselves available. If there were concerns or issues, yes, people could come to me and tell me about them. If it involved the medical care of patients and impacted, obviously, the medical staff, then yes, I would get involved in investigating and resolving those issues.
All right. So let's go over an issue then, sir. You testified under direct examination that the first report came in, and that was the first you had heard of it was on October 25th, 2018, correct?
That's correct.
And you stated that, and I want to make sure I got your statement correct, that the doses were dose amounts that the pharmacy had not seen before, correct? You remember testifying to that earlier?
I remember testifying to that. I don't remember my specific words, but yes, the pharmacy was concerned because these were much higher doses than they were used to seeing.
Okay.
Of these drugs.
But you learned later on that they, in fact, were used to seeing these doses, correct?
I'm sorry, could you define used to seeing?
Yes. You later on learned that this was Dr. Husel's routine practice to be aggressive with pain meds as it related to palliative withdrawals, correct?
Yes, I did.
So, and you were also aware, and you also learned that the pharmacy, that numerous pharmacists had approved both prospectively and retrospectively many of these patients' doses, correct?
Yes.
So when you told this jury earlier that the pharmacy had not seen these doses or that they were not used to them, it's not exactly true, is it, sir?
Objection, Your Honor, that was not his testimony.
I agree.
No, I'm talking about the fact, not his statement, Judge.
His statement, Your Honor, if we
Well,
can
you're
approach.
impeaching him, evidently you're attempting to.
No, Judge, I'm just pointing out that it's not true.
That was not his testimony, Your Honor.
Sustained.
Thank you.
All right. Now, sir, you are actually in a unique position because you were once a pharmacist, right?
That's correct.
And you were aware, well, you are aware that, of course, that these drugs that we're discussing are controlled substances, right?
Yes.
And you became aware that there was an issue at the pharmacy as far as not being in control of controlled substances, correct?
Yes.
And you're also aware that the pharmacy is answerable, has to answer to the DEA in reference to what they do, their procedures, and whether in fact they have control of controlled substances, correct?
Yes.
You're also aware that if the pharmacy is not in control of controlled substances, that this is a direct violation of the CMS, which is the Center of Medicaid and Medicare Services, correct?
Yes.
And you're also aware that they would be the pharmacy would be in immediate jeopardy by CMS of being able to see patients who are Medicaid and Medicare service patients, correct?
They were at risk of that.
Yes, correct?
Yes.
And in fact, the pharmacy was placed in immediate jeopardy because of their lack of control of controlled substances, correct?
That's correct.
Now, you're a hospital administrator, right?
Yes.
You're aware that Mount Carmel can't operate without Medicaid and Medicare patients, right?
Correct.
And that could potentially shut the whole hospital down, right?
Yes, it could.
Now, I want to show you what the prosecutor showed you in 20F, the State's Exhibit 20F. He's going to bring that up right now. This is an email that was forwarded to you by Katie Barga, correct?
Yes.
Now, at this time, you see that she wanted to bring something to your attention with this email, right?
Yes.
And if you look at the last paragraph here, it says, I wanted to copy you as well since pharmacy is concerned that the nursing staff is overriding Pyxis to obtain and administer these meds. Do you see that?
Yes.
And she goes on to say, I will keep you updated on the progress and send you an optional invitation to this meeting. Do you see that?
Yes.
So, Ms. Barga is bringing to your attention at this point that there's something going on at the pharmacy, right?
Yes,
That's all. That's my question. Now, let me ask you this: was it brought to your attention that the pharmacists were concerned about potential diversion because of the way these meds were being scanned?
there was conversation about diversion after these three cases were brought to my attention.
Okay. And as a former pharmacist and the third guy in charge, that was pretty important for you, right?
Yes.
Now, you stated that you went over your testimony. Actually, let me ask you this. In any of your direct examination today, did you testify about anything going on at the pharmacy?
I don't believe so.
Okay. And having said, after you testified about the voice reports, and in fact, as part of the procedure of the voice reports, it's mandatory to bring it to the attention of the actual provider, correct? Which would be Dr. Husel.
I don't remember the exact regulatory rules around voice reports, but typically I would.
Okay, so I'm going to go over what's mandatory and what you do typically, since because of your answer, sir. You're aware that the physician has to be notified of a voice report within 48 hours of having a voice report lodged against him or her, correct?
I don't recall that.
Is that your typical way of doing business with voice reports, sir? To notify them within 48 hours?
Not necessarily, no.
So typically, how long does it take you to finally get to the person who people are complaining about?
It depends on the situation.
Okay, so let's talk about this situation then. You stated after receiving these voice reports, that you started an investigation yourself, right?
Yes. Yes.
You would agree that the best thing to do is to hear it straight from the horse's mouth, right?
Are you asking his opinion?
Well, as someone investigating something, sir, best person to talk to is the actual doctor, right?
That's one of the factors involved.
Okay. It's also a good idea to perhaps go over the medical records with the doctor, is it not?
Depends on the situation.
Okay.
Not all voice reports are about medical care that would have anything to do with the medical record.
I'm asking you, sir, specifically about this, about your investigation that you said you conducted, that you told us today you conducted. My question to you, sir, is pretty good idea to go over the medical records and give the doctor a chance to explain himself, right?
Yes.
And it's also a pretty good idea to get these records, right?
What do you mean by get the records?
Before I ask you that, you didn't do that in your investigation, did you, sir?
Yes, I did.
Okay, you're talking about, I'm talking about earlier. Not until after he was placed on leave did you talk to him, correct?
It was after he was taken off of the schedule that I talked to him.
He was in fact placed on leave on, I'll get the exact date for you.
Look that up.
Sir, do you know the date that Dr. Husel was officially placed on leave while we're looking this up?
We made the decision to take him off the schedule on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, November 21st, 2018.
And was it not decided at the executive meeting on the 19th that he would be placed on leave?
No, that was decided on the 21st.
Okay.
If you're equating leave with being...
I request the witness be allowed to answer.
Let's stop and answer your question.
You would agree, sir, that November 21st is before November 26th when you actually met with Dr. Husel, right?
Yes.
So before ever placing this doctor on leave, a person that works for you under your supervision, you never even spoke to him, right?
That's correct.
And you never even spoke to the nurses who were present at the bedside on any of these patients, did you, sir?
No, I did not.
You also, as part of your investigation into the matter, never went and spoke to the pharmacists who had either prospectively or retrospectively or simultaneously approved these meds, correct?
Correct.
And you would characterize this investigation as a thorough one, sir?
I would.
Okay. Sir, you realized at the time of you conducting this investigation that one, it was a serious matter, correct?
Of course.
And you're talking about patients, which is a serious matter?
Yes.
And you're talking about the life and career of one of your employees, that's a serious matter?
Yes.
Okay. And yet, you didn't find it necessary to speak to the doctor himself or any of the nurses or pharmacists or witnesses who were involved in any of these patients, did you, sir?
Eventually, I talked to Dr. Husel, but you're correct. I didn't talk to him before he was put on leave.
Okay. Now, you did say that you looked at the patient's charts prior to the meeting, correct?
That's correct.
So you had a little more information as far as only what was put in the records, right?
Correct.
Now, you would agree, sir, that many of your employees, well, all of your employees are different, right?
Yes.
And some are good at their entering progress notes in the medical records, and some are not so thorough, right?
That's correct.
And what a nurse, doctor, pharmacist, or other healthcare provider puts in a medical record is completely what they think might be relevant, right?
I wouldn't necessarily characterize it as an opinion.
I guess what I'm trying to get at, Dr. Swanner, is there's only so much you can get from a medical record, right?
That's true.
Okay? Now, in fact, the best way to find out what's going on with a patient is to speak to those who are actually at the bedside, right?
Not necessarily.
Would you agree that it would be good to know what those at bedside are saying?
Depends on their memory and their motives.
Okay. Well, we'll get into motives in a bit, but let's stick to the investigation that you conducted. Now, you stated that you met with Dr. Husel on the 26th after he had been placed on leave, right?
That's correct.
And in fact, sir, when Mr. Zion was questioning you, you testified under oath that Dr. Husel's demeanor, you were asked about his demeanor. Do you recall that?
Yes.
Okay. And you said that he was passive, but participated and was collegial. That's how you described Dr. Husel's demeanor at this meeting today in court under oath, right?
That's correct.
Do you recall having to give a statement to the police as to what occurred at that meeting?
Yes?
And you labeled it note to chart?
Excuse me?
You labeled that statement, note to chart.
Yes, I did.
Okay. It's a little bit of a medical term to be given to the police, right?
Note to chart?
Yes.
I don't consider that medical. I don't know.
Well, having said that, you in fact told the police after being confronted about whether Dr. Husel was, his doses were perhaps hastening the death of patients, you said Dr. Husel seemed shocked by the comment. Correct?
Yes?
Okay. And that's not passive, is it?
My description of him being passive did not mean in a specific moment. It meant the overall meeting.
But you
He was
didn't
not
tell-
aggressive.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I cut you off. Please continue.
He was not aggressive. He wasn't pacing. He didn't stand up and pound on the table or anything like that. Yes, he was shocked, and that's not necessarily a passive reaction. But overall in the meeting, his demeanor was rather passive.
Okay, I didn't ask you, I don't believe the prosecutor asked you if he was aggressive or violent. I'm asking, I believe he asked you for your demeanor, correct?
Okay.
Yes,
Is that
I'm
your
defining
objection?
passive.
Okay, stop, Doc. Reason?
Argumentative, Your Honor.
Rephrase the question.
I'll move on. I don't really know how that was argumentative. I asked him.
Okay, I made my ruling, okay?
Okay. Sir, you also gave an interview to Human Resources about that meeting, did you not?
I spoke to a human resource person from Trinity.
Correct. And when describing Dr. Husel's demeanor during that meeting, you said he was sad, contrite, and sincere. Did you not, sir?
I don't recall the specific words I used in that meeting.
Okay, but you wouldn't argue with the fact that perhaps you told Human Resources that Dr. Husel was sad, contrite, and sincere, correct?
True.
Now, in your two-page or one-page or one-paragraph statement to the police, you don't say anything about him being passive here, correct?
I would have to look at the document. I don't remember especially what's in it.
Okay, I believe we emailed your lawyer a copy of that note to chart. Do you want to take a moment to review it? Do you feel you need to do that? To know that you never say anything about passive?
Okay, stop. Proper question.
I think I finished the question, Judge.
No, then you strike the question, you disregard the question.
Okay.
If you're going to do what you're doing, do it right format.
Yes, sir. Do you feel you need to look it over, sir? Or do you feel comfortable?
Yes, please.
Okay. I believe, how close is your lawyer to you right now?
Okay.
I have the document in
Hold
front
on.
of me.
Stop. Do you have the document in front of you? Review it, and then we'll ask you if it refreshes your memory. that refresh your memory?
Yes, it does.
Go ahead, then.
Did you say anything about him being passive, sir?
No.
Say anything about him being collegial?
No.
Okay. And during this meeting, what you did was you also asked Dr. Ralston what his routine and his practice is, right?
Correct.
And Dr. Ralston did that, correct, at the meeting?
Yes.
And subsequent to this, well, before I go any further, it's fair to say, doctor, or you would agree, that equally trained and equally qualified doctors can have two completely different opinions, right?
Yes.
And in fact, one could be right, one could be wrong, both could be wrong, and they both could be right, right?
True.
Okay. Now, Dr. Ralston is trained in internal medicine, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware that Dr. Husel's trained in anesthesiology, right?
Yes.
You're also aware that he was also, and that was at the Cleveland Clinic, correct?
Yes.
And you're also aware that he had a fellowship in critical care as well, correct?
Yes.
In fact, he's the only doctor at Mount Carmel West who's both trained in critical care and anesthesiology, is he not?
That's true.
Okay, so whatever doctor you may ask at Mount Carmel about Dr. Husel's dosing habits are trained differently, are they not?
Yes.
Now, having said, after Dr. Ralston gave his way of doing things, the three of you discussed about starting a committee, right?
There was discussion about a collaborative group of people working together to design a more rigorous standard care of these types of patients. I wouldn't call it a committee.
Okay, well, pardon me for mischaracterizing it, sir, but basically what you wanted to do is develop a policy, right?
I didn't necessarily say I wanted to do that, but there was discussion about the possibility of doing that.
And you asked Dr. Husel if he would participate in that committee or whatever you want to call it.
I don't recall specifically if I asked him or Dr. Ralston asked him or he just offered, but there was discussion that if that occurred, he would be interested in participating.
And would you like to review the last sentence of the statement you made to the police?
Sure.
Let me know when you're done.
Are you speaking of the next to last sentence of the document?
No, the very last sentence of the first page.
Oh, on the first page?
Yes.
Okay.
Sir, you in fact stated to the police that Dr. Husel was supportive of the concept and agreed to be part of a group that would draft such an order set. Did you not, sir?
I did.
Now, subsequent to this, at the conclusion of this meeting, you actually patted Dr. Husel on the back and told him not to worry, that he would not lose his job. Do you recall that, sir?
No, I do not.
Okay. So, it's your testimony, sir, that you never made or implied in any way that he'd be working back in no time?
No, I could not promise that. There was still an investigation of serious matters. I could not promise that to him.
Okay. These serious matters were so serious that, of course, you wanted him to be part of this committee, correct?
I never agreed to form that group. That was the possibility that was discussed in the meeting. There was no definite decision made to do that.
Now, let's talk about how things unfolded subsequent to this. You testified about these reports that were run subsequent to this meeting, right?
Which reports are you referring to?
The reports you testified where, I guess well, let me, if I can pull that document out. You recall in the direct examination being asked about reports created by Leslie Bowman, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Is this a good place to break? Because you're going to get into a whole different topic and it's getting to the top of the hour.
Sure.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to excuse you to go to lunch. Remember the admonitions? I'm going to steal another half hour. Let's start it back at 1. Okay? Is that fine with everybody? Didn't ruin your dinner, your lunchtime a little bit? Cramping your style?
All right.
Okay.
You run it, Judge.
I understand. It is my decision. I'll see you all at 1 then.
What time, Judge, what time are you repeating?
1?
1,
Hold on, Doc. Don't go away yet. Okay, we're on break for lunch. You're not to discuss your testimony with anybody. I don't care if he's in the room or not. How you testified or what you testified to. Now, you can answer a factual question, but you can't get any training or anything during the break. Fair enough?
I understand.
Okay. Thank you. You're excused till 1 o'clock. Okay. Can someone turn that around for me? It's in
the parties for this procedure based on his health issues. He has to periodically, after about an hour, go lay down somewhere. He didn't want to lay down either in the back hallway or in the outside hallway or in some room at the courthouse. We all agreed this was an acceptable format, and for Mr. Baez to attack that as if some sort of ruse to avoid the rigors of his devastating cross-examination, I don't think was appropriate, and I'm going to ask for some leeway as to on the redirect as far as leading regarding that. Secondly, we would also request, again, on the record, for any expert reports that we were promised, again, last night, and we have not received yet. So,
Pot shot aside, I think, Judge, I feel we did make the agreement that he could testify, but I don't think that I'm foreclosed from attacking that issue, especially given the fact that he's just a few blocks away. I thought he was going to be at home. I wasn't aware that he was going to be at his lawyer's office. I wasn't aware of any of that until at I think late yesterday. So in light of that, I think that's fair game, and it's fair game for.
No, he said you did it. He wants to be able to go after it too, is what he's requesting. Well, he wants to be able to
Well, he
explain it away.
can't testify for the defense, if that's what,
No, he's not trying to testify for the defense.
okay.
He just wants to be able to ask questions along the line of, why are you there, that type of stuff.
In terms of the expert reports, there was one updated one, which I think was sent to them.
No.
Or a supplement one. When was that sent? Allison?
Yeah, no, we just have a supplemental, which we did say that we would turn over to the state.
Okay, so we're turning, that one's ready to turn over. The only other one that's outstanding is the new one that we discussed at sidebar, that new expert.
Any
He's currently reviewing
anticipation?
records.
Okay.
He said he would probably be done by either tonight or tomorrow as well.
So it will be done shortly.
Can we have a name, please?
Allison can give you that name.
I'm sorry?
We don't even know a name yet, Judge.
I'm sure we gave him a name, Judge. I'm just...
This is Taylor Mick. She's following all of this, Judge. We don't have a name yet.
Okay, Taylor, talk to the other one. You guys get the issue resolved. If you don't, I'll get involved.
Well, note for the record, it's March 2nd, second week of trial.
I understand that. I understand I gave them leeway previously in an order and you objected. I understand.
Are we excused for lunch?
Anything else for the record? Okay, we're on break.
Thank you, Judge.
Hot shot aside, come on.